Welcome to the next edition of Expert Showcase. Today we have another epic guest for you. Her name is Diane Brandon, and she's going to tell you and talk to you about finding more fulfillment and the fact that it's an inside job. Hey Diane, how you doing today?
I am doing beautifully, Chris. So nice to speak with you.
Awesome. Well, I'm ready for another epic episode, folks. I've been so psyched. We were just finishing prep for the show. I told Diane I'm so psyched because of her topic and everything that she's going to bring to you today. You're going to have to stick around and wait till segment 2 to find out about that. But before we get to that, see, I take a breath about every half hour. So when you hear me breathe real deeply, I finally decided to breathe. I figure it's keeps me alive. You really don't want me dropping dead. It's not really good for the interviewer to just keel over from not breathing. Before we get into the epic topic of finding more fulfillment and how it's an inside job, we're going to talk about Diane's hero's journey. If this is the first time you're joining us, what we do here is we take our guests through and find out where they came from, where they got to, and what that turning point was. Everybody's had some sort of turning point in their life. Sometimes it's major, sometimes it's minor, and we always like to give you a great background of each guest. So Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you for a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you started, and tell us about your journey.
Well, I'd be happy to, Chris. I was born and raised in New Orleans, and I actually pursued performing for most of my life, acting and singing. I really thought when we talk about life purpose, I thought that was what I was here to do. And a funny thing happened to me about, how many years ago is it now? 23 years ago? I started working with my intuition. It came completely out of left field. I seriously doubted that I could do what I was trying to do. And I really stumbled a lot the first 3 or 4 years, and then finally I went, okay, I guess I'm intuitive. And this work absolutely took off, Chris. It took off way more than I could ever have foreseen. So it led to not just my individual work with clients, which I didn't try to do this, it just evolved that work is really about helping people find more fulfillment in their lives and doing some inside work. It led to writing, it led to speaking, it led to teaching and mentoring. It's just opened up a whole world to me. So, as I said, it came completely out of left field. It took me a while to get my sea legs, get any confidence with it, and then I had to try to figure out what I was doing because I was stumbling. I even researched intuition as a phenomenon. I added other tools, certainly the dreams, because I have actually been interpreting dreams for longer than I knew I was intuitive. Individualized guided meditation I give people affirmations. I use all sorts of tools. So that's kind of how I got into this field. But once it took off and once it felt right, I am firmly anchored in it now. I love it.
That is awesome. So the interesting part there that you said was that you were in the entertainment, I'll say the entertainment industry, and that's, coming from an old theatrical acting background, I just kind of lump everything together and call it the entertainment industry. It's funny because I was acting, I've been acting since I was 5 years old, and I thought I was going to be in radio, television, film, and then took a detour to IT. People can find that story online. We can talk more about that later on, but the point is that so like I said, I lump everything together and just call it entertainment. What I find interesting, though, is that you said being an intuitive and using your intuition and working with people on their intuition kind of came out of the blue. So while you were doing the acting, the singing, and in the entertainment industry, were you at the point where it was successful, and this was, you were successful and not really looking for something else, and all of a sudden out of the blue this something else came along? Or were you at a point where things were struggling a little bit and you were looking for, looking for the next step, and it just kind of started to happen? Which one was it?
That's an excellent question, Chris, and it was actually the latter rather than the former. My performing career was successful artistically. I did lots of acting, primarily in theater. I also did some on-camera work, did some voiceover work, singing. However, it wasn't really paying the bills, and so I was looking for something to supplement income. And a friend suggested that I work professionally with my intuition. At that point, I didn't know I was intuitive. I knew I was spiritual. I have always remembered what I thought when I was born, literally. And so I've been spiritually aware of my whole life. In grad school, I got, tarot cards and I Ching, but never really used them that much. So it was really to supplement income. And I was also teaching voice privately at the time. And I continued to do that for maybe 3 or 4 years, and the intuitive work took off. So it became the centerpiece, so to speak. But it was necessity is the mother of invention, but sometimes we don't know what we're going to get when we try something new.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny because I'll date us here at this point. There was a time when in the general lexicon there was a term starving artist, and kids, anybody probably under 30, I'll say, probably has no clue what that means, because they just think everybody goes on YouTube and makes $1 million, and that's great. It doesn't happen, but in fact, there's a funny story about how a guy just about a month or two ago, a very famous YouTuber came out and said how I made $4 million or how I made $2 million on YouTube over the course of like 4 years, and then the subtitle was, but I spent $4 million to do it. And and he goes through the fact of the matter is that he's looked at as a YouTube millionaire, and yes, he can say he made that much on YouTube, but it cost him and it's like, last time I checked, I'm not up for spending $4 million to make $2 million. To me, that sounds like a losing proposition. So anyway, but folks, for those of us in our generation, yes, there was a time, as you remember, there was a time of starving, people being starving artists. It's kind of one of the things I went through, and the reason I did my shift as well. And it's an interesting, and Diane, let's talk about that for just a quick moment. And the reason is because I believe that at least one of our viewers out there is going to resonate with that, saying that they have a passion or something they thought they were meant to do, but it's not paying the bills. So even though they thought they were meant to do it, maybe it really wasn't what they were meant to do. Meaning, you can think you're meant to do something all you want, but if it's not fulfilling every aspect of your life, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and financially, then maybe it's just the cloud that you're in because of the world that we live in. So take us back to that time when you were going through. You knew you were doing something you loved. You were passionate about acting and singing and entertaining, and it wasn't paying the bills. Do you remember, was there a decision that I know you said a friend mentioned the intuition, but was there a decision that I have to go find something else, or was there a decision that, was it just kind of something that really, it was just a friend walking up and saying, hey, you might want to try this? Do you remember that time period and what what you were going through?
I do quite well, Chris, to be honest with you. And my thought at the time was that I was going to supplement the income from performing, because ironically at that point in my life I was getting more paying work in acting, because on-camera video work had decentralized. From New York, there was a lot more available to do locally, but it still wasn't enough, for an income. So my thinking at the time was this was to supplement my income. And for several years, I continued to do both. But a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. A funny thing happened along the way during those years was that I got much more deeply into this work and developed a passion for it. And ironically, my desire and my motivation to do acting really waned for the first time in my life. So
I was going to say, I want to interrupt you there for a second on purpose, because I think you just said something that I want everybody watching to really hone in on. It was initially used as a way to supplement, and you found something that you had done before in your life. So you said, okay, or at least that you knew was a part of you, and you said, I'm going to use this as a way to supplement what's going on. And then all of a sudden you found your passions start to shift. You had done something that you believed you were passionate about, that you loved doing, and all of a sudden, you found something else that you loved more for some reason. I'll say, I'm going to translate to say you loved more, or at least you found the passion decreasing. Did I kind of summarize that right?
Yes, and to be honest, Chris, I think I will always love performing, because for me it's as natural as they say, falling off a log. I started singing solos in talent shows in second grade.
Mm-hmm.
So that love will always be there. It's just that this work allows me to work with other parts of myself. And I've found that I love assisting people to number one, discover who they really are on the inside, and to grow and unfold, and for them to find more fulfillment in life. I had several clients tell me over the years that I helped them transform their lives, and that's been very meaningful feedback. So it's funny, because I guess you could say, in a way, maybe I have more than one passion, but they really come from different parts of me. However, I had no awareness that I loved teaching before, and I loved working with students and teaching voice, but I really love teaching people intuitive skills, teaching people how to work with dreams. And the truth is that I bring in some of the performing skills if I'm speaking, and even perhaps if I'm teaching. I try to keep it real. I try not to keep it, motivational or, bigger than life, but I still bring those skills in. So it's almost like maybe I'm a little schizo.
No, the beautiful part about what you're saying, though, is that we all are a combination, an amalgam, so to speak, a cornucopia, so to speak. I was just watching this. As we're taping this, the NBA draft was just last night, and Sixers had 5 picks, and they talked about a cornucopia. That's the only reason it popped into my head. So anyway, get a good plug for the Sixers out there. No clue what Hinky's doing, but anyway, that's all besides the
players.
That is true.
My alma mater.
Oh, you went to see, folks. You've seen me digress. If you don't believe in fate and intuition and everything, why did I start talking about the Sixers and I have somebody from Duke? What are the chances of me having somebody from Duke? And I didn't even know she was from Duke. I probably should have, because I probably should have read a little more. But that's besides the point. But the point is that we're all this amalgam of different things. And the fact of the matter is that when you believe you're in the right direction, you might be, or the world might just have covered up what your true direction was, and you might be living in a fog. And when you start to, find something else, and that fog starts to lift, then you can find your true passion. And just to go back as we're going to kind of wind this piece of the show down, and this part of the show down. If you all remember a little earlier, I was talking about feeding all of your needs. Well, Diane's a published author with a major publisher. She's got books on Amazon, in bookstores all over the place. She's doing this. This is fulfilling. I'm going to guess, Diane, because I didn't ask you this question, but I'm going to guess that working with intuitives, teaching this and doing this is filling all of your buckets at this point, right?
It really is. It really is, Chris. It's filling all my, let's say, my inner needs, that have to do with work. Of course, one always wants the income to go up more. But yes, it is. It's fulfilling. I mean, I would never have thought 20-some years ago that I would say, I don't care about acting anymore. I still love to sing, but I'm not feeling a drive to get out there and do any singing, which is unheard of for me. So yes, it's really filling so many needs. I love it, and I feel a strong sense of purpose with the work I do.
Awesome. Well, you all are going to stick around. We're going to take a quick break here. I want everybody to stick around. We're going to then talk about the main topic of today's show, which is finding more fulfillment and how it's an inside job. You're going to hear all about some great things that Diane will teach you. You got to stick around though. Before we go, I want to make sure you got the real point of that. Diane was doing something that she loved and she thought she was meant to do. It wasn't fulfilling all of her buckets, including the financial one, and she needed something to help fill that bucket. The interesting thing was that at that point, when she started to make the turn and started to come back, she found something that she knew existed, hadn't really thought of it, took an external factor to come in, kind of nudge her in the direction, and now she's living a life and she's doing something that fulfills all of her buckets. And you can do the same thing as well. So hopefully by sticking around, maybe you'll find out some more about your own intuition and find out how it's an inside job. So want everybody just hang tight, maybe go grab a glass of water or something, but stick around, and we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back to the second part of today's episode with our epic guest, Diane Brandon. Today we're talking about finding more fulfillment and how it's an inside job. This is our Experts Focus segment of the show. And yes, for you Toastmasters out there, the heck with the ums and the ahs. I don't really care. Thank you very much. Gotta give a plug to my Toastmasters people. Go ahead, mark me down on your sheet. As long as you're watching the video, I don't care. Go ahead and give me whoever's the ah counter can write in the comments below how many ums and ahs I have. So, in any event, in this section, it's the Experts Focus section. This is where we're going to get deeper into a particular core problem that Diane helps her ideal client solve. Diane, today we're talking about finding more fulfillment and how it's an inside job. I'm going to go over the 3 bullet points with folks in a moment. Why don't you give us a very brief, quick 30, 60-second summary of what we're going to be talking about here in this piece of the program today?
That sounds good, Chris, and I have to mention that I was a Toastmaster too. So we're going to be talking about why we would need to focus on the inside. We're going to be talking about ways in which we can do that, and we're going to be talking about ways in which I help people do that.
Awesome. So there's going to be 3 main bullet points we're going to cover. One is going to be all about decoding your dreams. Another one's going to be about how inspiration comes in different forms. And the third one's going to be about discovering the true you. So let's start with the first bullet point, Diane. Decoding your dreams, learning all about how to decode the message in your dreams. What's that all about?
You know, I think for most of us, Chris, when we think about being happier, being more successful in our lives, and perhaps it's primarily in our culture here in the United States, we tend to think it's always outside of us. You know, I need for this to change, I need for that to change, I need to find this. We tend not to even think that there are things on the inside that we could either explore or change that could really help us find more fulfillment. And one thing I've really learned about, I guess I've always kind of focused on some things on the inside of me, but not to the extent that I have since I started doing this work. But I've learned that what's on the inside of us is huge. We tend to identify ourselves with who we know ourselves to be, which is our conscious awareness,
Right.
our personality. But actually, who we are on the inside, our unconscious, is that iceberg line under the water. That is really who we are. So, how do you start to, I call it befriending the other you?
Oh, that's an awesome way. Let me interrupt for a second. That's an awesome way to put it. Befriending the other you, because as you and I both know, the most powerful supercomputer known to man is our subconscious. I mean, it's somewhere, I forget what the last study, but it's something like 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind, and it has no gate on it. So whatever comes through, whatever comes to will just come through, and if you just allow it, you'll be able to, you'll be able to learn a lot about yourself. I must admit, when it comes to decoding dreams, I wish I would listen to my dreams a lot sooner. I remember a dream when I was in grade school, and I dreamt one night that a kid was going to pull my hat off and break my glasses, and the next day a kid had me up against the wall, pulled the hat off, and broke my glasses. And it's funny because until you go through that once, where you actually have kind of the premonition and everything, and decoding your dreams, you don't really realize what it's going to do to you. But I wish I would have decoded it back then, because I'd have saved my parents the cost of replacing a pair of glasses. But anyway. Which back then, I mean, it was it's funny because I don't, as you can see, I don't wear glasses anymore. But back good old LASIK surgery. But fact of the matter is, they were cheap back then. So anyway, back to you, decoding your dreams. I love how you're talking about that and how people really need to listen. Now, do you find that when you start to, let's talk about decoding your dreams just a little bit. When you find that you start to work with people and you start to talk to them about decoding their dreams, do you find that they just kind of push it aside and say their dreams don't mean anything? Are they receptive to it? How do people, when you're typical, you're maybe even your ideal client, how do they react when you start talking about decoding your dreams?
Most of my clients, I would say, Chris, are really receptive to this concept, and they already know that dreams can be a wonderful source of information, that they can be a tool in their lives. So so that's great for me. A lot of people don't realize how complex dreams can be, or the different areas of our lives that they can benefit us with. And I love opening people's eyes to all those possibilities with dreams. And of course, some dreams, like your dream about the kid in school, with your hat, taking your hat off and breaking your glasses, was literal.
Yeah.
A lot of dreams are not literal; they're cloaked in symbolism.
Well,
So,
and that's one of the other things I was going to ask you. When you work with clients and you work with them on their dreams, do you find that that sometimes their dreams are their subconscious's way of, I'll say, playing out a scenario to see how it would work out, so that it's kind of almost like a like testing before you really, it's kind of like a focus group. Do you find that when you work with clients, their dreams act almost like a focus group? Like maybe somebody has a dream about being president of the United States or being a leader in their company. It's because they aren't now and they want to be, and it's their brain's way of trying to cope with that. Or am I completely off base here?
that is just one aspect. Yeah, so yes, I don't know if I look at it as like a focus group, but sometimes if you're dreaming, for example, of being president of the United States, it may be a wish fulfillment dream. So it's telling you that there's something that you're wanting in your life, and it could be to be a leader, to be out there. So that is one aspect. Certainly, certainly. And we do a lot of problem solving in our dreams, which is another wonderful gift we can get from dreams, is some dreams are actually not just expressing something, but working on something.
Yeah.
Our unconscious is wonderful.
Yeah, and it's funny because I could go so deep into this and talk all about how and ask you about thoughts on on how the brain works. As far as, it's funny because I'm trying to stop. For those of you who know me right now, you know I'm trying to stop myself because this could turn into a 10-hour episode. And out of respect for Diane's time and everything else, I got to make sure what questions I ask. But I guess the whole point is when you get into dreams. Here's my last question about decoding dreams. When you work with people and you help them decode their dreams, does it also go into helping them to kind of process the fact that their brain and their mind really believes what happened in their dream happened? Meaning, as you know, Diane, it's funny, our brains can't tell the difference between what is real and what's perceived. So if a dream is strong enough, you can wake up and feel you were there. And sometimes it takes people time to get over that. Is one of the core things when you personally work with people on decoding their dreams, do you also work and help them process those feelings to get through, or is that something that's not part of your core, the core that you work on with folks?
Yes, I do, because I believe in using dreams as a tool, Chris. But let me go back to one thing you mentioned about a dream feeling real. I feel that a lot of dreams, we typically think we're dreaming about something. We're dreaming about, that kid who's going to be hitting us the next day. Some dreams are actually real experiences. We actually can have communications with other people in our dreams. That's a real experience. So the trick is, is figuring out, okay, was this dreaming about something? Was this something that was actually happening, actually real? And then to go, okay, what does this mean? Is this giving me any information that I need to follow up on? And it's when we take the information we're getting from a dream and we follow up on it in some way that we're using dreams as a tool in our lives. And a lot of people don't realize that you can use your dreams as a tool. Very, very powerful to do. Yeah. And you can also tell when you've gotten the right interpretation or interpretations for a person, because you can see the light bulb go off. You can go, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I find working with dreams very rewarding.
Awesome. So in other words, at the time of recording, I'm single at this point. So in other words, when I have a dream about a woman and we're talking, I need to go find her to see if we actually communicated and if she's actually waiting for me to show up at dinner at the restaurant, right? And it's funny. I mean, I'm kind of being serious because I'm kind of being serious.
Well, I have had clients tell me about dreams that they had over a period of time. We could call them a recurring dream that really did sound like they were dreaming about a future partner. Yeah. But the communication often happens between two people who know each other, and they wake up in the morning and they go, gee, I felt like I was really talking to Sally. And so, the person calls Sally and Sally says, yeah, I had that too. So they were actually having a conversation.
And now it's just going to take another few years for quantum mechanics to actually prove, and quantum entanglement to prove this is real. And, and then we'll have this recording to say Diane Brandon said it first. So, which
I know I'm not the first, Chris. I can't take. I've seen it myself, but I know it happens. I know it happens. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's kind of interesting because this, I'll say, kind of leads us into the second point, which is inspiration coming in different forms. So let's talk about that, about how to uncover your inner voice, and what are we talking about here about inspiration coming in different forms?
Inspiration can come to us while we're awake. It can come in the form of a gut feeling. Your gut says, oh, I don't want to go that way to work today. It can also come while we're asleep, and that can be, getting intuitive information about somebody, but it can also be with creativity. We can do the problem solving, and this is where you can actually consciously, deliberately try to get inspiration. So here's an example. You've got something on your mind. You're trying to figure the thing out. When you go to bed, when you go to sleep, you think, oh, gee, I wish I knew the answer to this. You can incubate a dream. And by what I mean is you can try to have a dream that will give you the answer. So what you need to do when you're going to sleep is think about what you're trying to get information on and want to get the information, because you have to really charge the emotional part of your brain, the amygdala. Your unconscious knows you better than you know yourself. So it knows if it's really important to you. And if it is, you'll get a dream about it, or you may just wake up in the morning knowing the answer. We can also work with this while we're awake, because I am convinced that we can give assignments to our unconscious, it works on them, and then it gives us the answer while we're awake, which usually comes when we're doing something routine. For me, it's taking a shower, brushing my teeth. For other people, it might be jogging or, doing something fairly routine. So there are different ways of trying to get inspiration. The other is to learn how to develop your intuition. I teach accessing it on demand as opposed to waiting for it to come to us spontaneously. And I guess I realized after I'd been working with my intuition for 3 or 4 years that I've always been inner guided. So I've always kind of been in touch with that inner voice, whether we want to call it having a spiritual source or whatever, that nudges me, that leads me, that guides me. So it feels to me, and especially with the work that I've done, that it's very important to find those different ways to find inspiration, and especially if you are an entrepreneur, you want to be able to use your creativity. You want to get information about your work, about your business, about new things to do, new opportunities, a new slant. And I personally feel that information comes to us all the time. We basically live in a sea of information because information is energy. And it's there for us. It's really a matter of knowing what to do in order to capture those insights and that inspiration.
Sure, it's all about resonance, and it's all about turning the dial to the right frequency to be able to have your antenna pick up the resonance and the information that's floating around out there. I love how you talk about incubating a dream. It's very similar to what I talk about. People say, what's one thing I can do to change my life right now? And I tell them 15 minutes before you go to bed, think about whatever you want, the most important ththing that you want an answer to, and allow your subconscious to work on it. And most people get taken back and say, well, then I won't be able to fall asleep. And I said, no, you don't understand. That you think about the question, you're looking for the answer, and once you get practiced at it, you'll be able to fall asleep, and you'll get it might not happen right away, but in some way, shape, or form, you will get the you will get the response. I also loved how you talked about that the intuition that our brain usually gives us when we're doing something routine. It's kind of like another example I like to give is it's when you forget somebody's name and you're sitting there and going, their name is on the tip of my tongue, I'll remember it. And then you forget about trying to remember it for a while. Your subconscious is working on it. And you're sitting there driving along the highway and you shout out, Diane Brandon! And whoever's in the car looks at you like, are you crazy? And it's like, no, 6 hours ago I was trying to think of this person's name and it just came to me. So I love how you talk about, the fact that you're you can let your subconscious mind work on things during the day by just planting the thought, planting the seed, and then basically going about the rest of your day. Because as they say, force negates, and as I'm sure you probably have seen, the harder you work to try and find the answer. And let me ask you this question, so and to see if you've got the same interpretation as I do. What I've always heard is when you try and force things, you're really using your conscious mind to find an answer, and when you let go and just kind of ask the question, then go on about your day, you're feeding it to your subconscious mind to work on. Is that your teaching and interpretation as well?
Yes, I may put it in a different way, Chris, but it's definitely the same thing, because basically when we're looking for the answer to something, especially wanting it to come to us, that is a receptive mode. If we're analyzing something, then that's active. So if we are trying to get an answer and our energy's tight, it's usually not going to work. So it's when we are, relaxing our energy and just letting it come to us. But again, and I teach this with intuition. Getting intuitive information is a receptive mode. It's receiving.
Right.
So we've got to be in that receptive mode for the information to come in.
Well, let me also ask you this: when you're talking receptive versus active, when you're in a trying to get an answer mode, aren't you working from your own base of knowledge? In other words, you're trying to develop an answer based on all the information you consciously know. And if you can't get to that answer based on the information you consciously know, because if you don't have the tools or if you don't have all the information, isn't it better than just to put it aside and let the general knowledge of, whether you want to call it, I'm a faith-based guy. I'm one of the only faith-based guys I know, though, that is steeped in his faith and also believes in the law of attraction and believes the fact that there is this universal knowledge out there. So it's kind of like, people don't, most of my friends, we don't get into conversations because we either get, they'll either be like, nope, it can't be this way or it can't be that way. And it's like, hey, fine, you believe whatever you want. But that's besides the point. So whether you want to call God, the universe, whether, whatever higher power you believe in, where I was going with that was, I think what you're really saying as far as being receptive, or are you really saying as far as being receptive, that what you're doing is letting something greater than yourself, something that has more answers externally than you might have, at least at that point, access to internally, help you get the answer that you're looking for?
Well, I would actually say, Chris, that it's possible that there are two possibilities, and
Okay.
one is that your inner radar is sussing out the information, and the other is, and these are not mutually exclusive, the other is that God or the universe or the divine, or some people go to guides or angels, are giving you the information. I am spiritual. I've been spiritual since I was born. So I feel that I'm always guided and led. Sometimes I feel that perhaps the information is coming from within me because of, that inner radar, and other times I know, that I'm being given the information from the outside. So I think it can can actually be both, either or both.
Yeah, and that's, when people, and once again, I'm going to throttle myself back. This week we could have 17 episodes. We have to talk about how we can turn this into a full-fledged show later on, because I believe, as other people do, that we have all the answers inside of us. There's a but there, but I don't believe we have them all now. In other words, we have access to them. We can get them, and we can, the universe and other things that are going on can give us the answer. So I don't subscribe to the belief that we are born with all the knowledge that we need inside. I believe we can be led, and I believe, I'm not sure if you're bored with that, or if you're saying yay, or if you're trying to stop me, or if you're saying yay. I hadn't figured it out.
This is a huge point for me, Chris, because I think I mentioned that I've always remembered what I thought when I was born, and the one thing I remembered was I wasn't happy being here again because I wasn't with God. The other thing that upset me was that I knew when I wasn't here I had absolute knowledge, and while I was here I did not have absolute knowledge. So I would like to say, theoretically, we can know everything, we can have access to it, but that's not the way it really happens in reality. And I feel that there's a reason for that, because I feel that one of the reasons that we're here is to learn and grow and unfold. And if we could have access to absolute knowledge and know everything, we might not be unfolding. It's just, that's a huge topic for me. So that's why I was
Well,
reacting like that.
and it's interesting because, and this last thing I'll say, and then we're going to move on to discovering the true you, because I think we could have, hours and hours of episodes on this. The interesting part is, I think if we did have access to absolute knowledge at our fingertips, I think it'd be a very interesting society for this reason. There are people that are driven by the thirst of knowing things and of learning new things. And there's a huge portion of our population that is driven by that. And I wonder, and then like I said, let's talk about Discover the True You, because I'll get your feedback and then we'll move on to Discover the True You. But I wonder if we had absolute knowledge at our fingertips, how much different, and I'll even say how much worse our society would be, because if you look at the large population of people who love to learn and love to discover things, what would they do then at that point? And how, kind of how different would our society be, and where would be the fun, so to speak, and what am I trying to say? Not necessarily the fun, but where would be the adventure? Yeah, where would be the adventure in life if granted, now it'd be nice to know that if I wanted to know something, I could go punch a button and get it. But if you had that completely, so anyway, what are your final thoughts on that? I have to say final because, like I said, we'll go for 17 hours on this. So,
I feel that one aspect would be that we might be happier, at least those of us who love learning things and exploring, because we can learn things really easily. On the other hand, I feel that it could be problematic, because that sense of searching that tends to impel us forward, both individually and as a culture, might be missing. And again, I go back to what I feel is a spiritual kind of backdrop to this is we wouldn't be learning and growing and unfolding. If, for example, if we knew that relationship wasn't going to work out, we might not get into it, and perhaps there were lessons for us to learn, to grow from, by going through it. So that's just an example. That's my 2 cents.
That's a great example, and it's and it does segue very nicely into discovering the true you, because if we knew everything, there wouldn't be much to discover. So let's talk about discovering the true you, and what you mean by that. So discovering the true you.
It's interesting, Chris, and this has come directly from my intuitive work. What I discovered, and it took me like 3 or 4 years to figure out what I was doing, and what I was discovering was that each of us has a true essence inside of us. And I look at it as the essence, the blueprint for who we are in this lifetime. And part of that essence has applicability and implications for our purpose in life. What gets layered over that is all the personal stuff. The wants, the fears, the old tapes, the self-limiting thoughts and beliefs. And what I found myself doing in the intuitive work was naturally tuning in and reading a person's essence. And then if somebody was dealing with something, and often a client comes when they're dealing with something, then I could get information on what was causing a block for them or a problem, which usually goes back to these personal stuff layered on top of the essence. So that's kind of it in a shorthand way of looking at it. And the person's true essence is who they really are, and often it speaks to passion and purpose. And I found in sessions with clients that often this is the first time they've ever had mirrored back to them who they really are. Sometimes they kind of knew, and sometimes they were surprised, because sometimes we tend to identify with that personal stuff.
Well, yeah, so, and it's exactly like I talk about in finding your 0 point, and the fact that there's this blueprint inside of you that's going to, that once you find it and you live to, through, and within it, that you can have a happy, successful, and long life. And it's also similar to the fact, I think what you're really saying, or I shouldn't say I think what you're really saying, but another way to say what you're saying is that, through your life you get caught in this fog, and this fog ends up covering up your 0 point, and you think you are somebody, but until you have somebody mirror back to who they see in you and who you really are at your core, you could be going completely in the wrong direction with your life, your business, your relationships, and you might even be mildly successful at what you're doing, but you're still not living up to your true and full and current and future potential, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we have a lot of examples that we've seen over the years in real life, people who may be out in the public who are very successful insofar as external criteria are concerned, financially, etc. But on the inside, there are some real issues, and sometimes we've seen those played out publicly. So, there are a whole lot of different reasons I feel why it's important to tap into who we really are on the inside. I personally feel that not all, perhaps, but most of the problems we see in our culture, especially with people who, may be doing less than positive things, comes from them. They're not knowing who they really are on the inside, and they're living from coping mechanisms that they picked up on culturally, or responding to things from their past that were problematic that they haven't worked on. So I think, you're saying 0 point, I'm saying essence. You say tomato, I say tomato. We're talking about the same thing. It's so important to, I feel, know who we really are and live from that and express it. And I think just doing that almost inevitably leads to feeling happier and more fulfilled. It's kind of a starting point. It's kind of a starting point, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of interesting we're talking about this because earlier today I was watching a biography special on Dana Plato, the star from the young female star from Different Strokes. And she's a great example of where when she was on that show, you would think she was successful. There's obviously some demons. She had gotten into some nasty stuff. It looked like she had turned her life around and it looked like she was getting everything in order, and then that was right before she passed away and fell back off again, and it fell off the wagon. Whatever ended up happening at the end of her life, I say whatever because I wasn't there, so I can only go by what the news reports say. But it's it's interesting. So you look at people like that, or you look at people, because we're in such a media-driven society. We see everything that's going on with all the people in the media, the actors, the actresses who look successful, yet in the background they're getting divorced or they're having trouble, and you just wish that. My wish for them would be that if acting really wasn't their essence, that they would find something that they would be happier with, and understand that, well, just because they got brainwashed that being a millionaire was the right thing to do in today's society, that it wasn't for them, and they're going through and destroying their lives, because there's many people who've been successful being rich. That's what they were meant to do, and that's their essence. I mean, there are people who are born and that's what they are meant to do. There's other people that are born to do different things, and I find, and let me ask you this question. This is what I find, but I want to hear your feedback. When you find somebody who's not living to their essence, do you find that they struggle a lot to try and live up to what they think they should, and that when they find their true essence, that things become easier?
I would say generally yes, Chris. I have generally seen that if people are not aware of their essence or not living from it, they are struggling in one way or another, perhaps several ways. And usually when they learn who they really are on the inside, or recover or uncover and rediscover who they are on the inside, there can be a process involved. It's not instantaneous, but usually it sets off, it has a cascading effect, and they are on the road to making different choices in life. And some of that involves career changes, some of it involves relationship changes, but usually they start on the path, and I'll use that term, towards being happier and feeling more fulfilled. And I've seen this over and over again in my practice with clients. People unhappy in their career, unhappy with the people they've been around, unhappy with this, unhappy with that. And it's not that they're malcontents. It's that they've been trying to live somebody else's life, or they've been trying to live other people's expectations of them. And once they uncover their essence and anchor themselves in it and start expressing it and living from it, things improve. It can be a process. It could take a year or two, but things improve. And I feel like that's a lot of what we've been seeing in our culture in the past maybe 12, 15 years is, and I think that's why we've seen more entrepreneurs. So to me, it's fascinating, but to see the difference in people and how much happier they are is just, I love that. And if I've had played a role in that, even if it's a small part, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so beautiful. I think it's a great place to kind of wrap up the Experts Focus segment of our show today, because, in the end, when you discover your true you do start down the road to happiness. Does it happen overnight? Usually not. Does it happen over time? Yeah. Does it take a while? It could. Does it take trial and error? It may. Does it take time and energy? Probably. Might it be an investment of not only time but money and other things? Sure. But in the end, if you're not living a happy, fulfilled life now, and if you're living an empty life, what's it worth to you? What's it worth to you to live that happy life? What's it worth to you to fill all your buckets? Only you can answer that question. I can tell you from personal experience that working with someone like Diane is going to help you. Working with Diane is going to help you. You need to uncover and discover the true you. Today on the Experts Focus piece of Expert Showcase, we covered how to decode your dreams, how inspiration comes in different forms, and how you should discover the true you. So what you want to do now is you want to head on over to DianeBrandon.com and DianeBrandon.net. If you're looking for an individual consultation, head over to DianeBrandon.com. If you're a possible corporate client and looking for Diane for a seminar, head over to DianeBrandon.net. Both of her website addresses are on the screen right now. Also, she has 2 books. One is Dream Interpretation for Beginners, and the other is Intuition for Beginners. So you can head out to Amazon.com or your local bookstore and look for it and ask for it. They're published by, I think you said Llewellyn, right?
Yes.
Excellent. So Diane, it was awesome. For those of you, like I said, you want to go out and get in touch with Diane. See what she's got to offer. Take a look at her books. Look at her website. See if she's a good fit for you, and if you're a good fit for her, reach out and start to find your true self. Now we're going to go ahead and take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about visibility, credibility, authority, getting known, getting found, and how Diane uses different marketing, video content, and other marketing techniques to get her known and found. And stick around. We'll be right back. Awesome, and we're back. This is the final segment of today's Expert Showcase episode. This is all about visibility, credibility, authority, getting known, getting found, how to use video content and other marketing techniques to get your message out. We've been talking today. I can talk right. That won't get cut out. I'll just stammer through it. I can talk right. Diane obviously can talk right. She's been talking great. I think I can talk right. We've been talking today about finding, your excuse me, finding more fulfillment. It's an inside job. finding your level of fulfillment. Man, I'm just, my brain, Diane, we just got done, and I got to say this before we get into this. We just got done. We've been recording for almost an hour. It's been an incredible 2 pieces of this show. If you're watching this for just this, go back and watch part 1 and 2. That's part of the reason why I'm, my brain is, is absorbing all of this. So it's like I'm getting into this focus mode. So we're going to try and keep this light and fun. We're going to keep this segment to under 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about video content marketing and other things. So Diane, I know you've got a major publisher behind you in Llewellyn, so it makes it a little bit easier from a marketing standpoint. But let's talk a little bit about, maybe when you first started off, or things wherever you want to go, either when you start off or now, things you do to build your visibility and credibility. Because let's face it, you've got the authority piece locked down. You've written 2 books, you're on a major publisher, so that is really the key to authority, is writing a book on it. But what about visibility and credibility? What are you doing or have you done in the past to build your visibility with your ideal clients and your credibility with your ideal clients?
I think that's a great question too, Chris. And in some ways I was fortunate when I started out doing this work. I live in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, and a lot going on here, and it was an organic process. I actually started going to one place physically, regularly, to do sessions with clients. I was approached by somebody who had a publication here in North Carolina to contribute an article. I did, and that started the writing. I started doing some speaking. A lot of that was at local groups. There were events. It just all kind of took on its own life. Since the recession hit in 2008, we don't have as many of those external media or opportunities to use. My one website, DianeBrandon.com, I've had since 1995 or 1996. So it's been out there for a long time. The books, of course, do help. I've been doing social media. I've been on Facebook for maybe 6 or 7 years now. I'm usually at my 5,000 friend limit and have a long kind of waiting list, and right now I have over 1,400 people following me. So, I don't try to do a lot of marketing on there because I feel like that turns people off. So I do it occasionally. Use Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, selfgrowth.com. I used to have a radio show, talk radio show, so I was out there from that standpoint. I've done a lot of interviews. I've been interviewed a lot. I have actually done some of my own CDs. I have 3 meditation CDs available. I have a little welcome video on my website, that I shot myself. I'm trying to remember if I edited it or not. I can't remember at this point. I also have a short little video on intuition on my website. I have a video on the wellness aspects of sleep and dreams. I did that for a couple of corporate entities, and that's available on my website. I have a 4-part series on developing intuition that's available primarily on a rental basis. I have written endorsements for other people's books, which helps with visibility and exposure. I've been growing a newsletter list for several years now. I tend to send a newsletter out monthly or bi-monthly. And I'm working on my next book. I'm also working on getting more interviews, especially when you have a book come out. Even if you're with a regular publisher or a mainstream publisher or a major publisher, you have to do a lot of your own legwork to get interviews, to get the exposure. So I'm currently, the book on dreams, Dream Interpretation for Beginners, came out in March of this year. So I'm currently lining up interviews to get the word out on that book. So I would say I'm using a multi-pronged approach.
And there's three things I want people to focus in on. First of all, You made a comment about you went to a location, did work for people, and then somebody approached you. So first thing there is you took action. You were very humble about it. You're like, well, I just kind of did this and it just happened. But if you hadn't taken that first step, it wouldn't have happened. So for those of you watching, take that first step. I mean, the key, people ask us all the time, hey, I want to be more visible. I got to display my credibility. I'm going to do all these videos. I'm going to do everything. That's great, but if you don't take action and start to do something, then it's going to mean, it's not going to be, it's not going to benefit you at all. The second thing I heard was kind of there at the end, where even if you're with a publisher, you still need to do a lot of legwork. So one of the things I want prospective authors watching this to understand is that gone are the days, except for a select few, of getting big advances and having a company put all of their marketing dollars behind you as an author. Are there some people who are still getting it? Yes. Is there a 1 in a million shot that you might get it? Sure. So I'm not saying don't try it, but understand that it's not a be-all, end-all. Understand that you're still going to have to do work. And the reason I bring it up is because if you're looking at whether it's creating videos or doing social media or anything else as this, hey, if only I had the visibility, then I would get the clients, you have to stop thinking like that. You got to think of, how do I build the visibility? And then if other things come along and other opportunities come along, then great, it will make my job easier. But, I really worry about some people who look at it as the be-all, end-all. Because Diane, I'm sure you probably know some people as well, whether it's authors or speakers or other clients you've worked with, that kind of look at one thing and say, if I just get this, it's this be-all, end-all. And
Yes.
Usually it's not the case, right?
Absolutely. I think you're dead on there, Chris.
Excellent. And the third thing I want to point out is the videos that you have on your site, and the fact that you've understood that at least a minimal amount of videos is good so that people can start to get to know you and can start to get to really understand you as a person more than just what's written in a book or what's written down on paper. So those are three excellent things. One of the things I want to touch on real quick is you said you don't try to do marketing on Facebook. So let me ask you a question. Do you put your content at all on Facebook? Like, do you share articles on Facebook at all?
I tend not to share the articles that I've written because they're on my website. I have my videos up there. I have the welcome to my website video. I have a demo for the wellness aspects of sleep and dreams. So those I do post on Facebook, and I do the occasional marketing, for the books. I have found myself that if I receive an email every day, or if I see frequent self-promotion on somebody else's Facebook page, it's a turnoff. So occasionally I do it so that I'm not turning people off, and so that it's still fresh.
Right.
When people see it, it's somewhat fresh.
So what type of information do you post on Facebook or on social media?
Well, on Facebook, because my radio show the last 4 years was on green topics, I post a lot of articles on the environment, on alternative health, topics like that. I do that research every day to find the cutting edge, the newest things. And also because I'm trying to help raise awareness. That's something I have felt since I discontinued my show 2 years ago that I should be doing. So on Facebook, I post a lot of that, and then, I also post some of those, I love animals, animal stories, animal videos, some of the humorous graphics that people post. I post a quotation every day. I had really not done much with Twitter, but for some reason, just in the past week, I've been starting to do more with that. So occasionally I will post something about or tweet something about, my book, or I will tweet. Today I tweeted a quotation I usually, in the past week or so, I've been tweeting maybe two to four tweets a day. If it has to do with a social issue that I feel is important ethically, I may tweet something about it. So on LinkedIn, I primarily post updates on LinkedIn that have to do with a book coming out, or if I'm teaching a workshop, notifications like that. I feel like other things are not necessarily appropriate on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is for a business community. And I also use Twitter, for, updates about announcements about teaching a workshop, speaking, items like that. And I do that on my Facebook page as well. Facebook page is probably the most purpose, of the three. Self-growth, only if I have something new, like a new book, go in and, update on there.
Yeah, exactly. So before I forget, have you seen the rabbit and the snake video yet? That as of recording just hit a couple days ago. Have you seen this one yet?
The rabbit, the snake was trying to go after the bunny,
and the
mother comes along and she is relentless and she's like chasing the snake and you're gonna. And it's just enough to get the snake to go away. She keeps going after her, and the snake's trying to get away.
I've never seen that before. I've never seen a rabbit. I mean, I've never seen a rabbit attack another, and then just go after it. So the second thing I was going to bring up is just whether you know it or not, all those articles that you're posting and the information you're posting about green topics, that's actually, I would classify that as content marketing, because what you're really doing is you're raising a consciousness, you're raising awareness, you're sending out articles, you're sending out information. Your goal is to raise awareness, and in the end, you're still probably driving traffic to those websites and to those businesses. So the one thing I would invite you to do is take a look at what you're doing on Facebook, and I would invite all our viewers to do this as well. You don't have to market to people. In fact, the interesting thing, Diane, is just, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it was kind of interesting to hear you talk about not marketing, and then I don't know if you realized it, but you talked about how you heavily market on LinkedIn because all you're doing is talking about your new books and where you're speaking and everything, and you're heavily marketing on Twitter. So it's interesting if you really think about it. So just when you see this, kind of replay that back and realize that you really are very heavily marketing, and it's you fall into the same category that most people do, where they don't really see it because they're not asking really people to buy. They're just kind of, hey, I'm letting you know this is happening. One of the things I would invite you to do is on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, look at ways of sharing more topics about dreams, about your particular specialty. Look for ways of sharing those to drive traffic back to your website eventually. In other words, you can, there's ways on Facebook you can attach, I'm sure you know that you can attach photos and attach links and everything so that traffic drives to get the meat of the article, drives back to your website, and then share your knowledge in that way. In the end, I mean, there's there are standard definitions of content marketing out there. Mine is just putting content out so that it attracts people to you, your website, and services, and eventually makes them more receptive to buy. It's out there, like from the Content Marketing Institute or somebody else. I'm sorry, I didn't steal it. I never saw it. It's mine. You can have it, I guess. I don't know. Who cares? But the point is that look at all the content you're creating. And for the viewers as well, look at all the content you're creating as an effort to raise awareness of things that you're good at, without having to sell people and say, hey, come and buy my widget, because people will eventually, I know you've written the books, doing that gets people on a consistent basis to look at you as being a more credible authority, and then get your books and being being that authority. So if you're going to share them already on your website, and it's going to be something that's not behind a paywall or people don't have to pay to get, I would invite you to look at how to get them, how to get pieces of it on to your social media to then drive the traffic back to your website. Kind of make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
Thanks. I really appreciate it, Chris.
Sure, you're welcome. I think that's where we're going to wrap up our Expert Showcase episode for today. Diane's been an epic guest. Once again, if you're just tuning in, or if you followed through this, you got to go back and watch episodes 1 and 2, or segments 1 and 2. They're going to be, the links will be below. They'll be somewhere. You'll be able to get to them. You might even have a little rewind button. So you might be seeing the full videos. You might just boop, go back and rewind. So Diane, before I go and give the folks our call to action, any last words for the folks today on this after this fun last hour of recording?
Well, I would like to thank you, Chris, because this has been absolutely wonderful. It's been delightful. And I would like to mention to our viewers that we can all find more fulfillment in life. We can all make positive changes. They don't have to be dramatic, earth-shattering changes, but we can all take steps to find more fulfillment. And please don't think that it's always outside of you. It's often inside of us, and there's so many different little things that we can do to be happier, to find more fulfillment. And I have seen this over and over again with my clientele. So I would encourage you, and it is so personally rewarding. And I'm not just saying this because I've worked on myself, which I have over the years, but also based upon what I have seen with my clients and what they've told me. So please, I encourage you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being an epic guest today, Diane. For those of you coaches in the audience who would like to be a guest on Expert Showcase and who realize that having an episode like this will help increase your visibility, credibility, and authority, and start or continue your video content marketing library, head over to expertshowcase.com. That's expertshowcase.com. Click on the big apply button and send us your information. We'll take a look at it. If we feel you're a good fit for the show, we'll be back in contact with you, get you all booked up and scheduled to be a guest on the show. If you are a coach and realize that building a video content and video content marketing library is the key to your success in business, head over to VideoContent.Agency. Look around a little bit, then get in contact with us. Let's have a quick conversation, see if we're a good fit to work together. If we are, then we'll design a package specifically around you and do our level best to get you visibility, credibility, and authority. So until next time, everyone, make it a great day.